All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Ben, I'm good to get started. Um, Thank you so much for being here this afternoon for our Teacher Registered Apprenticeship 101 webinar. My name is David Donaldson and excited to talk with you all today. Uh, there we go. Perfect. So a little bit about us. We're the National Center for Grow Your Own. We're a nonprofit organization that gets to work with folks all across the country in this space. And one thing that we always like to start with is our own definition of grow your own. And what I mean by that is if you ask 100 different districts, you often get 100 different answers on what a grow your own program may be. And in other words, it could be a career day for middle schoolers about, hey, this is what a teacher does, versus maybe it's a program for career changers. But we like to say that it's a clear articulated pathway for an aspiring educator to become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. And if you notice, we don't put an age on there. I could be talking about a 15-year-old, 25, 35, 45, 55, or 65-year-old. We also don't put an educational background on there. Could be talking about somebody with a bachelor's degree and associates or no college at all. Point is, I believe that traditional higher ed or ed prep programs, they can teach someone to teach math. They can teach someone to teach special ed, but you can't teach someone to have a heart for kids. And so we really believe that in the grow your own registered apprenticeship work, it's truly employer driven and that districts should be able to identify those individuals who have a heart for kids and regardless of their age, regardless of their academic background, create an opportunity for them to have that clear articulated pathway for them to be able to become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. As I mentioned, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. Myself, Ben, and Miles on our team, we spun out of the Tennessee Department of Education. But now we have folks from all across the country on our team, based in Texas and West Virginia and Ohio, and other parts of the country that were very, Minnesota, Wisconsin as well. Very, very fortunate to have a growing team in this space. And so we work with states, school districts, and ed prep programs to launch or expand grow your own programs or registered apprenticeships for teachers and principals. And actually, Ben, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat, as of just last week, we got the U.S. Department of Labor to approve a new occupation for a lead teacher, which we'll actually be having a webinar for on October 3rd, Friday, October 3rd. So if you're interested, please sign up for that. We worked with North Dakota to get the principal occupation approved and worked with them again on the lead teacher. So very excited about that and the opportunity that provides. Also, please know we'll do, feel free to submit any questions you have and I'll look to address those as best as I can at the end. And so I always like to lay the context of how did we get to this point? What were the problems we were dealing with when I served as Chief of Human Capital at the Tennessee Department of Ed? We were dealing with a teacher shortage just like everybody else was, and frankly still is a lot across the country. And so specifically the problems we were trying to address included removing the financial barriers for those who wanted to become a teacher. Number two, over 20% of our vacancies were in special ed or English as a second language. So often our most vulnerable students were the ones without the teachers they needed and deserved. Number three, feel free to laugh, but we wanted to eliminate the concept of a first-year teacher. How could I better prepare you to be more than day one ready when you took over a classroom of your own? And then, well, it's been almost 4 years now since I've worked in government, so I'm able to speak a little more freely. And what I mean by that is I oversaw 42 educator preparation providers in Tennessee. Not all were created equal in terms of quality, to say the least. And so we wanted to address those quality concerns with ed prep providers, but also we had a lot of rural districts where the closest ed prep provider could be over an hour away. And so that's what we refer to as EPP deserts that existed. So we were looking to tackle all of these problems with what we did. And so what we ended up doing was launching competitive grants, a grow your own grant. But in there, we had certain non-negotiables in place. If we were going to be investing money into this work, then what were the things that we wanted to see changed? And so, number one, and most important, we were going to allow aspiring educators to become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. So, absolutely no out-of-pocket costs if you were going to be participating in this program. Number two, all graduates had to graduate endorsed in either special ed or English as a second language. And to be clear, Tennessee is a local control state. So districts and ed prep providers would talk amongst each other and in their application say, we're going to do math teachers, we're going to do science teachers. Great, more power to you. But you have to add special ed or ESL as an endorsement to that program. Number three, Tennessee policy was only 15 weeks of student teaching or clinical internship experience, which is just not enough time. So we said minimum 2 years of student teaching or clinical internship if you were getting a bachelor's degree, or minimum 1 year if you were getting a master's degree. Our big bet was more time under the mentor teacher, who is the teacher of record, would better prepare you to take over a classroom of your own one day. And then also we wanted to increase access to higher quality ed prep providers in the state. What this competitive grant led to for us was 65 of our districts partnering with 14 different ed prep providers to create opportunities for just over 670 individuals to be able to become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. Our all-in total cost came out to just under $10,000 per candidate, meaning we only invested $6.5 million to get over 670 future educators. It was really important. We'll get into it more about leveraging that competitive grant to drive down the costs. We ended up seeing more of our higher performing ed preps. As I mentioned, I oversaw 42 of them, but we only ended up having 14 accepted into the program. So we were able to steer more candidates to higher quality providers. And then specifically due to that increase in the length of student teaching or clinical internship experience, that's when I was approached and someone said, this sounds a lot like a registered apprenticeship. And I had no idea what that was. I understood the concept of an apprenticeship, but registered apprenticeship, I did not know. But it led us to working with the U.S. Department of Labor on this application. And so part of this application led to me submitting to get the occupation of a teacher approved for registered apprenticeship over 2 presidential administrations. It took 4 different applications. So you may have heard third time's the charm. That was not the case for me. And we had 15 letters of national support. And so it was definitely a labor of love, some may say, to get this approved. The one thing I do like to claim is that I might be the only person you'll ever meet who got both President Trump and President Biden to agree to something. And that was the denial of the application I wrote. So really good for my self-esteem, but I didn't quit. And so in Thanksgiving of 2021, the occupation was approved. And then the first program between Clarksville Montgomery Schools and Austin Peay State University, sponsored by Tennessee Department of Ed, was approved. One thing before we move on to the next slide, Ben, that I like to provide context here is I'm from Michigan. I'm from the Detroit area, and I was a former principal of Detroit Public Schools and led talent for Detroit Public Schools. And in 2008, when everything went to hell in a handbasket with the bankruptcy, everyone knew someone who got laid off. My brother-in-law had been laid off. And so the same money that was used to help people then become, whether it be plumbers, welders, work in the culinary arts, or cybersecurity, what getting the teacher occupation approved in November of 2021 meant for the first time in 83 years, I believe it was at the time, which is, I think it's now 86, 87 years that the National Apprenticeship Act has been around. But the money that's been used to help train people to become those plumbers, welders, to work in the culinary arts or cybersecurity, you name it, could for the first time ever go towards individuals to become a teacher. So it's a big deal tapping into new dollars and dollars outside of education. And so what is a registered apprenticeship? This is the official definition from the U.S. Department of Labor. Do not worry, I will not read this to you, but I will take a slight pause. And most people like to say to me, David, kind of sounds like what it's saying is a registered apprenticeship is an apprenticeship that is registered. And you would be correct. So what does it really mean? And this is what a lot of our work is. We translate things into education speak. We like to say that apprenticeship is the best of both worlds. It is completing that degree program or a post-bac license program while getting that extensive hands-on experience under that K-12 teacher of record, mentor teacher who is the teacher of record. But the thing that makes this, in my opinion, so special and unique is that it's never, ever, ever, and it never will make sense to me that currently folks have to, aspiring teachers specifically, have to pay tuition to a university to then provide free labor to a school district, and we call that student teaching. That makes no sense at all. And so with an apprenticeship, it's an earn and learn model. So it means you must be paid during that clinical internship student teaching experience. And I want to be clear that although the work of NCGYO, anywhere we work, any client that we've worked in, and we've worked in over 30 states, it is free to become a teacher. But registered apprenticeship does not automatically mean that. Should it mean that and can it mean it? Yes. But there are plenty of folks out there, plenty of programs out there that are still charging apprentices an arm and a leg, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But one thing that does mean is it does mean you must be paid during that student teaching clinical internship experience, which is key. And so I already alluded to this, but we view registered apprenticeships should be viewed as phase two of a high quality grow your own program. So if you have a great program going that's training aspiring educators, then let's get it registered so that you can tap into labor funds so that either more folks can participate or it can help you with the financial sustainability of the program. However, if you don't have a grow your own program, no problem. Let's start with this. Let's use this as an opportunity to ask, who is it that we're trying to prepare? In what areas do we want to prepare them in? What are the values and priorities of our state, of our school district? What is it that we want to train folks on? Is it science of reading, high quality instructional materials? Nowadays, you're hearing a lot more about artificial intelligence, whatever it may be. It can reflect what you want your future educators to be trained on. At the same time, though, and unfortunately, this is a slide I've had for over 4 years, and it was more of a prediction that has become true. There are plenty of bad actors out there where there are for-profit companies that are just saying, oh, this is a new way to tap into money to make money. Or it's universities that are still charging $20,000, $30,000 a year and not changing any financial barriers for these aspiring educators. And so to me, that's just putting lipstick on a pig. And it's not what this was created for at all. And so very concerned about that. Also very concerned about programs where it's emergency certified. So you're a teacher of record on day one. I'm sorry, that's not an apprenticeship. An apprentice is somebody learning to do the job, not doing the job. And if there was a surgeon registered apprenticeship, I guarantee you they would not be performing open heart surgery on the first day on the job. So my question is, why do we allow that with the teaching registered apprenticeship? That should not be allowed. That should not be happening. And so one of the things as we think about this, though, is we can tap into labor money. At the same time, the only way to ensure that these programs will scale and be sustainable is if we do drive down those costs from the ed prep providers. And so one thing that is true is that enrollment in EPPs is down over the last decade. And so they need us just as much as we need them. And so what I would ask is, are you identifying candidates who wouldn't otherwise attend? And so I'll use, this webinar as a personal right of privilege to share why I'm so passionate about this work. I'm passionate because my mom was literally my school cafeteria worker. She also taught Sunday school and vacation Bible school for over 2 decades. She was not able to afford to go to college. And yet I'm also the son of a West Point alum. And so my question is if we believe that public service represents both military and teaching, then where is the equivalent of a GI Bill for those who want to become a teacher? And so that is what really inspires me in this work. As a former principal, I could name multiple individuals, whether they were parents, guardians, tutors, bus drivers, city year corps members, just individuals who would have made excellent teacher that the sole issue was the financial barrier. And so as we negotiate with universities and drive down costs, we're also expanding the pie. And so we've learned to go to via the competitive grant process that we stop going to deans of universities because nine out of 10 deans would say, I'm not in control of tuition. And that's technically true, but it doesn't mean they can't ask. So what we learned was let's just go straight to the president or the provost and say, hey, wouldn't you rather have 50% tuition for 40 students versus the current 100% you have for 10? And they got it every time. And so if you're a state, if you're a school district, you have a lot of power. You have economies of scale that you can leverage and negotiate with university providers. And so some of the, on the next slide, some of the funding that is available for folks to use. I'm always big on, you're not going to get your registered apprenticeship program approved tomorrow morning. So what can you do? What is in your locus of control? Well, we can be using our Title II, our Title III, our IDA dollars, our state general funds, our Perkins 5, even fully funded vacant teaching positions. If you have money, if you have vacant position and you have a long-term sub in there, well, your district likely budgeted at an average teacher salary, which nationally is $67,000. And so I was an English teacher, so math isn't my thing. And yet even I can do this, which is let's just say 60 grand. If you have a long-term sub in there, that's costing you 25 to 30K. So let's just round that up to 30. So 60 minus 30 is $30,000. Where is that money going? So a lot of our work is helping states or school districts deal with the CFO, who he or she can often be a CF no, and we turn them into a CF yes, meaning how can I take that $30,000 in savings and use that to pay for two paraprofessionals 15 grand a pop to finish their degree? Or how could I use that $30,000 of savings to hire a paraprofessional who typically makes 18 to 24K and use any leftover money to help go towards their degree? So in other words, money that's been set aside for human capital should stay in human capital. It shouldn't be used to patch up overages in the IT department or in academics or in another department. It's really important. And a lot of our work is working with chief talent officers, whether at a state or district, to have those conversations with the CFO and say, hey, what about this? What about that? You might be thinking, well, why did he say Title III? Why did he say IDA? Well, you might remember earlier, we required all programs to be dual endorsed in special ed or ESL. So if I required ESL, now I could pay for up to 50% of it with my Title III funds. Or if I required special ed, I could pay for up to 50% of it with my IDA funds. So it was really important for us to blend and braid our different funding sources in order to come up with a model here. Also, the final thing I had on this one was about high school funding. So whether dual credit, dual enrollment, early college, let's get those high schoolers as much college credit as humanly possible to also reduce costs and the time that it will take for them to finish their degree to become a teacher. On the flip side of this slide, you'll notice we do not believe any money whatsoever should ever go to anything outside of tuition, books, and fees, meaning you should never, ever, ever put money towards salaries. Because if you have teacher vacancies, you almost certainly have paraprofessional vacancies. We do not need money going to subsidize salaries. That money is already there. And so I just explained with the long-term sub, for example. But again, if you have a career changer, you hire them into that paraprofessional position. And you say, hey, I'll pay for you to finish your degree. So now this becomes a recruitment strategy. Come and work in our district for 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, whatever it takes for them to finish their degree. And we'll help you become a teacher. It involves a mindset shift of now X%, and I don't know what that X is, that's for you to decide, but X% of our paras or our teaching assistants are actually future teachers. I want to be clear, there is absolutely nothing wrong, and it's amazing if someone wants to be a para for 30 years. That's awesome. But at the same time, being strategic from a human capital lens, let's maybe use those vacant positions as they pop up and use that as in your interview. Hey, do you desire to become a teacher? We're going to prioritize the candidates who want to be a teacher and start using some of those para roles intentionally as a pipeline into teaching. Also, as I've shared, never pay market rate tuition. All of that stuff is negotiable. All of that stuff is negotiable. There's a reason universities charge one rate if you're out of state versus another rate if you're in state. And something else that I know I'll offend people on, but it's okay, is that English 101 is English 101. So I don't know why you're paying, university prices when you can get English 101 from your community college. And I say that as actually a former college dropout who, when I went back to school, went to a community college, got my associate's degree, and it forever changed the trajectory of my professional life. And so I'm a big believer in let's be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. Let's save, our money for, that the actual EPP is typically your junior and senior year. So let's save the money for that and take advantage of community college offerings in this space. Next slide, Ben. Just again, this is a 101 level webinar. So some aspects of an apprenticeship program, there needs to be a sponsor, an employer, a related instruction provider, and then the program needs to be approved either by the USDOL or your state apprenticeship agency. For context, the employer is always the school district. The related instruction provider is the approved ed prep provider that is eligible to help someone get licensed. And then the sponsor, we recommend it should always be a state agency, our preference being the state education agency. That's not the case everywhere we work, but we do believe a state agency is the best entity to be the sponsor for two main reasons. Number one, and most importantly, quality control. We want to ensure that kids are getting not only the teachers they need, but deserve. But second, when the state is the sponsor, it's the best chance for scale. Now, to be clear, a sponsor could also be the district itself, higher ed institution, a nonprofit, a for-profit, you name it. But we just really, really push for sponsors to be state agencies, whether the state apprenticeship agency or a state teacher licensure board. There's 13 or 14 states that have those. We really believe a state agency is the right entity to be the sponsor. And then as far as the components, typically a minimum of 2,000 hours of training. To be clear, in all the states we've worked in, we've gotten that as minimum one school year. 2,000 hours is based on that traditional idea of 40 hours a week, 50 of the 52 weeks you're working. That's not the case in teaching. We know that. But so we've gotten in most places that minimum one school year counts as the 2,000. A progressive wage schedule, which for anyone who works in talent and HR, that's just your step and lane schedule. So how are they increasing their wages by going through this registered apprenticeship program? Related instruction, which is provided by the related instruction provider, is just the course and sequence of them taking the courses needed towards getting that bachelor's or post-bac license. On the job competencies, those usually look like whether it be INTAS standards, the Danielson framework. We've seen states use their teacher evaluation rubric and then just maybe take it like a step back because obviously these folks aren't full-time teachers, but using something like that as your on-the-job competencies, and we have multiple versions that we have used in different states, and then how you're going to match up the apprentice with their mentor or the journey worker is how it's referred to in labor. To be frank, I think there's nothing more important than that. I really, truly believe that mentor-mentee or the journey worker apprentice relationship makes or breaks any registered apprenticeship. And that in my opinion goes beyond teaching. That's for any occupation. I just think that there's nothing more important than who you are matched up with. There's no doubt you can learn what not to do from those who might not be the best matchups, but it's just truly makes or breaks it if you have the right journey worker, if you have that right mentor helping you and coaching you and advising you throughout the way. And then also there needs to be a fair and transparent selection process. Next slide. And so as of this month, according to the United States Department of Labor, there's now 49 states have a registered apprenticeship and teaching program. There's also territories like Washington, D.C., U.S. Virgin Islands that also have programs. Really exciting. And I can tell you that the 50th state is actually, I'll be there later this month. We're working with the state of Montana, who just received a big U.S. Department of Labor grant, so we can support Montana to become the 50th state with the registered apprenticeship and teaching program. And in August of 2022, we launched the National Registered Apprenticeship and Teaching State Network, which meets once a month. In every session, we have a different state present on their work. These meetings are completely off the record. You have to be a state employee. It's either a state education agency, a state apprenticeship agency, or somebody from like one of those teacher standards boards or governor's office is in these meetings. And so we started with 7 states in August of 2022. And I'm proud to say that as of today, we are now, Ben, on the next slide, we're now at 49 members. So 46 states plus the US Virgin Islands, Washington, D.C., and the Department of Defense education activity. So it's been awesome to see this network grow, for states to learn from one another, territories to learn from one another. It's a safe space for folks to ask questions where they can't get answers elsewhere. All the people in this network are the folks that are usually pioneering this work in their respective state. So it's just been awesome to have this group together. Later this month, we'll actually have North Dakota present. We just had Massachusetts present. North Dakota is going to present on their new lead teacher. Massachusetts was presenting on their early childhood registered apprenticeship work, which is some awesome stuff taking place there. And it's just been great to have and learn from various states. You might think like, what does Virginia have to learn from Utah? Or what does, Maine have to learn from California? But you'd be surprised. You can take something from everybody. Even if it's, hey, I'm glad you tried that, so I can learn not to do it, which has been great. We also have a similar network for school districts. And if anybody here represents a school district or a state and they're interested in joining, I can guarantee you and give you my word that you can afford it, because we run these networks for completely free. So we've never charged for it, and it's just been great to have. Next slide. And so there continues just to be a lot of buzz in this space, and not just, you might see there's an Education Week article, but not just in education, but in NPR, Washington Post, PBS. It's been awesome to see this take place as we talk about, and hopefully have changed the conversation about who gets to become a teacher and how they're prepared. People used to laugh when I would say our goal is to create a world where you can become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. 49 states later, people aren't laughing. And that's pretty awesome, because we all know somebody who, solely due to financial barriers, it's actually one of the reasons why we'll never, ever, ever say upskill. Because as a former teacher at Baltimore City Public Schools, I had a parapro in my classroom, and she knew more than I did when I first stepped foot in the job. And that will always stay with me, that it wasn't fair to my students that they had a teacher who was not prepared. But B, that the difference between me and her was, for whatever reason, whatever life circumstance, she wasn't able to get her degree at that time in her life. So where is this program? Where is this program for someone like my mom, for somebody like my former coworker, et cetera? And states are doing these programs now all across the country. We're just going to continue to focus on the quality control to ensure more folks can take advantage of these long term. With that, this is our info, and we're going to quickly turn it over into Q&A. I see there's a handful of questions already. Ben, sorry to call an audible on you, but if you could also just find the link to our national convening, January 28th to the 30th, 2026 in New Orleans. We'll be hosting the 3rd annual national convening on registered apprenticeships and teaching with our good friends at NASDAQ. And so really excited for that. We'll have multiple states, districts presenting on their work, and we hope folks will consider attending. We've already sold over 150 tickets in just 2 weeks. It's sold out the last 2 years, so please consider attending as quickly as possible, or registering as quickly as possible. With that said, okay, slide, Ben, yeah, perfect. Will we get a copy of these slides? Yeah, we can make them available. There's actually, let me think. I could just send it to anyone who registered for today's webinar. So that's not a problem at all. We will also, we record this webinar, so this will get posted usually within like a week. And if you go on our website, NCGYO, yep, Ben just put in the chat, thank you. You'll see all past recordings as well. There's actually an old recording of this very webinar, but please know the data is going to be a little outdated. There was not 49 states with a registered apprenticeship at the time. This is a session we typically do once every three to 6 months or so. And so anyway, but yeah, I can send out this deck to everybody. Somebody else asked the exact same question. Oh, and I'm sorry. Somebody asked to clarify. Oh, I really appreciate someone asking this because I feel bad. Education, we have way too many acronyms. Somebody was asking, what's an EPP or an LPP? An EPP is an educator preparation provider or program. It is an entity that is able to train someone to nominate them for licensure in a respective state. 90+% of EPPs are going to be institutes of higher education. But technically speaking, back in Tennessee, for example, Teach for America is an EPP because they can nominate for someone for licensure, or Nashville Teacher Residency. It's not a higher ed institution, but it can nominate, it can accept people who already have a bachelor's degree and help them become a teacher. LPP is leadership prep program, meaning an entity that can nominate someone for principal licensure in that case. So my apologies. I like to think I'm better about acronyms, but I messed that one up. Do you see any programs utilizing online related instruction or online EPPs? Yes, all the time. I mean, we had that in Tennessee. Austin P State University, the first ed prep provider in the nation, first university in the nation to get approved as a registered apprenticeship and teaching program, would serve people 3 to 4 hours away in East Tennessee. And I think online is really important for those who are in those rural deserts where the closest physical entity is over an hour away. If you're making 18 to 24K a year, you're not going to be able to afford gas to drive an hour every day. Frankly, you're probably already working a second job. And so it's important that ed prep providers offer flexible opportunities for folks, whether that is giving credit for prior learning, whether it's offering courses that are asynchronous, whether it's offering courses on the weekends or at evenings, whatever it may be. But the whole point here is that states or districts should listen to their candidates and what would work best for them. And then again, I can't emphasize this enough, leverage your economies of scale to say, okay, we're looking for university or ed prep providers who can do this, this, and that. If you can't, no problem. You're just not going to be eligible for this funding. But the whole point here is let's meet people where they're at, because that's what it's all about. That's why we keep saying employer driven, employer driven. Employers need teachers. They have the folks. They simply need to remove the financial barrier for those to achieve it. But we need ed prep providers and universities to play ball and meet folks where they're at. And there's plenty of great examples out there. But we just strongly encourage that. Okay, good question. So at the completion of their apprenticeship, do you provide support for licensure? I'm guessing that apprentices have to complete licensure exams, and I'm just curious about if there's support for next steps that lead to full-time employment. So let me just take a step back to that question and just say any registered apprenticeship program should, and unfortunately I'm laughing because it's me I laugh so I don't cry. But anywhere we've worked, all registered apprenticeship programs must follow that state's teacher licensure laws, policies, whatever are in place. So I want to be very clear. There is one example I've heard of I'm not going to say the state, but there's an example in a state that got approved they're not even an approved EPP, so they can't even recommend someone for licensure. How that got approved, I'll never fully understand, and obviously should be disapproved because it's actually misleading to the candidates and taking advantage of people. All that to say, we actually have a partnership with a group called Passage Prep that specifically is for licensure assessment, test preparation. Because that is something that is needed for folks. I always say if I was to take the Praxis exam right now, I would fail it. There's a reason there was a game show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? I'm rusty. It's been a while since I've been a teacher. And so I think it's really important for that preparation on licensure assessments to be part of existing wraparound supports. In many places where we've worked, when I say that we legitimately have no out-of-pocket costs for the candidates, we even include that the praxis exam. And for those who don't know what praxis is, it's a licensure assessment. Some states may use another company, Pearson, in their assessments. But the point is, we've had it where you get one free administration of the test to be able to pass that. But yeah, wraparound supports are definitely needed for many folks. And so we do strongly encourage it. There's many other groups out there, but our official partnership is with Passage Prep that has really, really good success rates in helping individuals get across the finish line. On a different note, but you'll see where I'm going with this. Another partnership we have is there is a lot of data tracking and reporting if you're the sponsor that's needed for a registered apprenticeship program, whether you're reporting to the United States Department of Labor or to your state apprenticeship agency. And so for those who are looking in that direction, we partner with the organization CRAFT, C-R-A-F-T, CRAFT Education, and their platform is actually completely free for folks to use. So we have many states in our network who are now working with CRAFT since we endorsed them this past January. Do you have information on what DOL funding opportunities exist for registered apprenticeships and teaching? Yeah, I mean, when it comes to labor funding, there was two big grants that have previously occurred. One was annual, called the SAFE grant, State Apprenticeship Expansion Formula, and then the ABA grant. I know there was a couple entities that got ABA funding, which was, I think it was stood for Apprenticeship Building America. But also WIOA funding. So the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, it's very similar to your Title II and Title III or IDA funding, meaning it's annual allocation provided to states, typically broken down in three buckets, if I remember correctly. WIOA Youth, WIOA Adult, and WIOA, I believe, I'm going to butcher this and I apologize to my many labor and workforce folks are on this call that I see in attendees. So hopefully they'll give me some grace, but I believe it's displaced worker, something along those lines. But predominantly they are based on eligibility requirements that, are typically based on socioeconomic status or other identifiers. And so in our experience, a lot of paraprofessionals, because they only make 18 to 24K a year, they're likely going to be eligible for some WIOA funding. What's also nice about labor and apprenticeship funding is, unlike education dollars, these funds can be used for other types of wraparound supports, like gas cards, if you do have to drive to your courses. We also had somebody that was able to use it for childcare services. That's something that's not allowable with education dollars. And so I think that's awesome that labor and apprenticeship funding, not all funding, but certain, funding sources can be used to help meet the needs of the individual apprentice to ensure their long-term success in the apprenticeship. Do most apprenticeship programs include funding for mentor teachers and or field supervisors? It depends usually on the collective bargaining agreement that is in place. I definitely don't see the field supervisor, but the mentor teacher or the journey worker, yeah, it just depends on the collective bargaining agreement that's in place. We've seen on average anywhere from like $1,500 to as much as I think 5,000 or 6,000. It just depends. I will say districts or states could use their Title II dollars. A state could use Title II set aside for that. We did not fund that in Tennessee during my time there. I'm not speaking for my time after in current state. But the reason I bring that up is our thought was, okay, districts, you're literally, the state's paying for someone you hand selected to get a free degree. So it was a little bit about having the district put some skin in the game. And so then they would put, their money in for that mentor teacher. As far as the reason I say no to field supervisor is that when we're either working with a state or district and run a competitive grant and the university says, okay, for $100,000, we can produce 12 teachers. That $100,000 should include, I don't care how you spend that 100. I just care that those 12 individuals will have no out-of-pocket costs. So if they want to use some of that money to go towards stipends for field supervisors, more power to them. But I'm paying for apprentices and, most importantly, apprentice graduates. in this space. I'm not as concerned about how the sausage is made. Of course, you know, you're always following your state or district's procurement laws and what's allowable within a budget. But yeah, just that's how I'd separate those two. Um, could you go over what you meant by state entity as a sponsor? Sure. Yeah. So a government agency. That's our recommendation, meaning the state education agency, or we in some states it's the state higher ed agency, or the state apprenticeship agency, or the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, or the Hawaii Teacher Standards Board. That's an entity in Hawaii, and I think there's like 13 or 14 states where the entity that approves teacher licensure and ed prep is actually separate from the state education agency. I'm just stressing again the reason why we strongly advise this and is because of the ability to ensure quality control as well as for scale. And so, for example, a tiny rural district with 2,000 kids, they're not going to have the capacity to be their own sponsor. And so we like to see when a state is there, then, you know, what we've done in other states is that when the state's the sponsor, then all the state's saying to that tiny rural district is, all I need from you is for you to hand select the person that you want to get a free degree. You're not going to have to worry about the data, the reporting, the this, the that. No, no, no. We'll take care of that. And so that's why I'm big on state agency. And then also because the state agency, that economies of scale, you can negotiate with universities on costs. For example, if that tiny rural district, if I gave that individual, that tiny district, $10,000 voucher, coupon, scholarship, whatever you want to call it, and they walk down the street to their local university, that local university may say to them, hey, I think you're missing a zero, or maybe you need to make this 50K or 60K, whatever it may be. But if I'm able to group that one person from that rural district, tiny district, with a bunch of other districts as part of a consortium under a state sponsorship, now all of a sudden I can say, hey, I got 50 candidates, or I got 75, or I got 100. And if I'm paying 10,000 bucks each for each of those, that's real money. And districts, or sorry, universities or ed prep providers are going to say, well, wait, we could use that money. These are candidates who never would have come to us in the first place. So why not? And that's where what we've been able to do, uh, frankly, all across the country, which is pretty awesome to see. Um, who can I contact to receive technical assistance or program implementation? Um, that feel free to reach out to us. That's why I provided our email, info@ncgyo.org. We are the first and largest intermediary in the space. We do youth apprenticeships, teacher apprenticeships, principal apprenticeships, and now lead teacher. And then we do, you know, other things as well. We're doing human capital audits, where we actually helped Arkansas become their own, the State Department of Ed, become their own ed prep provider so they can certify their own teachers as part of a special education registered apprenticeship. So feel free to reach out if we can be helpful. We'd be happy to help. Is there a specific webinar to sign up for if we're developing this currently? I think my answer would actually just be probably similar to the one I just gave to the previous person. Feel free to contact us. We're not going to do a separate webinar on technical assistance. That's frankly how we pay our bills, is by doing technical assistance. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to talk. But yeah, info@ncgyo.org in that space. I had a follow-up question. A sponsor does not need to be a state agency. I recommend that it is, but again, a sponsor can be state agency, a higher ed, a district, for-profit, nonprofit, you name it. It's just in our experience, we highly recommend that it's a state agency. And the programs, like in states where the state agency is not heavily involved or is not the sponsor, frankly, we often see it's the wild, wild west. And we see a lot of bad actors in those places because programs aren't being enforced. And so you literally have cases where a university who is struggling just all of a sudden claims that their program's now a registered apprenticeship, taps into labor money, and doesn't pass on the savings to the apprentice. That's not okay with me. And I'll call that out all day long. So it's really important that we really think states are the best entity, state agencies are the best entity to enforce this stuff. Now, Yeah, that I'll leave it at that. Um, Let me see. Oh. Yeah, there's a question in here. And if anybody else has questions, feel free to submit. This is, I think, the final question for now. Oh, okay, I got another one that I'll come back to. But this person's asking about funding opportunities specifically for those who are on a provisional license, or which I think, just to translate that, and please, to the individual, correct me if I'm wrong, but an emergency certified teacher. The person says specifically these are students who are registered teachers of record and thus they don't qualify for WIOA funding. Well, that's correct. They're likely not going to qualify for WIOA because of, typically WIOA is going to have certain economic socioeconomic status. They need to make below a certain amount to qualify for that. If you're a teacher of record, you're likely getting paid a teacher salary, so significantly more than a paraprofessional. But also, I'll just go back to what I said previously. I do not believe that a registered apprenticeship is somebody who is the teacher of record. There are programs out there that are approved registered apprenticeship programs that are for emergency certified individuals to get finish their license. I'm sorry, the data is very clear. Those individuals, anyone who just walks in off the street and becomes a teacher, the data is clear. They're not going to last. The percentage of them, the turnover is going to be so much higher for those individuals. More importantly, it's not fair to kids. And so, if a registered apprenticeship, if this was a medical registered apprenticeship, somebody was a doctor or becoming a surgeon, they would not be able to perform open heart surgery on the first day. So neither should registered apprenticeship teachers. And so we strongly advise there's those individuals. The other thing too, one of the reasons why they shouldn't be eligible for WIOA funding is if they're making teacher pay, then they can use that money to finish their license or do whatever program that they want to do. A parapro doesn't have that kind of money, period. And so we want funding to go to those individuals in those cases. If somebody already has a bachelor's degree, we have plenty of registered apprenticeship programs across the country where they still work as a para for a year. They still get that 1 year of being under a mentor who is that teacher of record first. And the retention rate of those individuals, let alone the impact on student achievement, it's well worth it. It's just well worth it. So I'm going to continue to encourage, don't be penny wise, but pound foolish. It doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do that teacher or somebody who calls themselves a teacher, but more importantly, it's not fair to the students in that space. Examples of on-the-job competencies that districts use, I mentioned earlier, we depend, we're flexible here and we've used different things for different folks, but in task standards, folks have used their teacher evaluation rubrics, whether that's like the Danielson rubric. Um, in Tennessee, we use the state teacher, the Tennessee teacher, it's called TEAM, that rubric for the on-the-job competencies. I think it's really important in this space to use something that folks are already ideally used to and more importantly normed on, especially because it's evaluatory. And so the journey worker will literally be saying to the apprentice, have you mastered this competency in the space? So it helps that it's not necessarily something new, but something that they're comfortable or used to. So again, we'll have, if you're interested in joining the state or district network and you represent a state agency or district, please sign up. Happy to add you to that. We have our national convening in January. Please register when you can, as tickets are going fast. And next webinar will be October 3rd on the lead teacher. And we'll be presenting with our dear friends at North Dakota Department of Public Instruction, State Superintendent Kirsten Baszler, and Chief of Programs Lori Matsky, who North Dakota was our very first client, and we're very honored to continue to work with them. Man, almost 4 years now, which is crazy. Really appreciate folks attending this. Again, we can send out the deck through an email blast, and a recording of this will be on our website within like a week, within a week's time. With that, if everybody has a good rest of their day. Think if you're just starting on this journey, it's not for the faint of heart, but it's good work, it's meaningful work, and you got to feel like Oprah. instead of giving away free cars, you get to help people achieve their dreams of becoming a teacher. And frankly, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome work. So thanks for all that you do, and hope to see you at a future webinar, future state or district network meeting, or in New Orleans in person. Take care and have a good day, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye now.